Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Calvin Rankin, and we are having a series of Bible study lessons from the book of Daniel, and we are in chapter 3. We've done chapters 1 and chapter 2, and now we're in chapter 3, and we've done the first 18 verses of chapter 3 in the last video, so with this video we'll be starting with verse 19. Before we get into that, though, I want to just ask that if you're finding this channel at all to be beneficial to you, that you're enjoying the content and it's helping you at all with your walk with the Lord and helping to understand some things about Scripture, I'm going to ask you, please go ahead and either subscribe, like the video, or make comments. In fact, all three. Do all three. And if you think that someone else that you know, friend, family member, coworker, would benefit from this as well, please, by all means, share the channel with them as well. So that they can benefit, because all of that would be an encouragement to me to know that what I'm putting out there is actually helping people to love the Lord more, to walk with Him better, to understand Him more, because really that's what this channel is all for. It's not to make money, it's just to help people with their walk, and that's all I want to do. So if you can do that, that would be awesome. I'd appreciate it, and thank you ahead of time. So now let me go ahead and get started with the lesson we're going to talk about. Like I said, we're going to be starting with chapter 3 verse 19, but let me give a recap real quick first of what's happened in the last video with the first 18 verses. In the chapter, in verse 1 of chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the Babylonians, he sets up a giant golden statue, probably of one of his gods, because he was a very devout follower of his gods during his lifetime. And he sets up this golden statue, and he decides he's going to have all the people that work in his government across the country come and worship the statue and honor the statue, because it's probably, like I said, probably one of his gods. He wants them to worship it. And so he gathers everybody around. He tells them, okay, look, when you hear the music play, go ahead and fall down and worship. And then he says, anyone who doesn't fall down and worship will be thrown into a fiery furnace and burned alive. And killed. And so the music starts to play. Of course, nobody wants to be burned alive, so everybody bows, everybody worships, except for three guys. The three guys are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and we met these three guys in chapters 1 and chapter 2, and in those videos, in those chapters, their names were Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, but those were their Hebrew names. In this chapter, we're using the Babylonian names of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but they didn't bow. And Nebuchadnezzar found out about it, and he calls them to him and said, look, you guys, I'm going to give you a second chance. Go ahead, when the music plays the second time, go ahead and bow. And they say to him, basically, we're not going to. We're not going to bow, because we serve God, and we love God, so we're not going to bow and worship another God when we already have God. We're not going to do it, even if it means that we have to die. So basically, that's what happened in the first 18 verses. And so we're now going to start with verse 19 to see Nebuchadnezzar's reaction to what they say. And verse 19 says, then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics, their hats, and their other garments, and they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. Because the king's order was urgent, and the furnace overheated, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. So basically, the reaction is Nebuchadnezzar's even angrier that they would even answer him this way. And so he orders his guards to bind up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. In other words, tie their hands and their feet together. And then he's so mad. I mean, the furnace is already hot enough to kill people, but he's so mad that he orders it to be made 7 times hotter than it normally is. And so the guards pick up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they take them to the fiery furnace, get ready to throw them in, but it's so hot that the men who are carrying Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the heat kills them, and they die. And as they're falling dead, they drop Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they fall into the flames. So basically, that's what we've read so far. Now, what I want to talk about is in verse 23, but not really the whole verse. It's really a small, not even the whole sentence, just a small, tiny part of the sentence. But before I tell you the part I want to read, I want to explain something. Normally, the version of the translation of the Bible that I read is the King James Version. I've been reading to you from the ESV, the English Standard Version, because I know most of you don't read the King James, but I love the King James because the language is just awesome. I love the floweriness of it. It just puts such stuff in such cool ways. But I'm reading this. Now, what I want to say about this verse is actually based on the King James translation's rendering of this verse. But it's not really different from what we're reading here. The only difference is, because I really want to focus on part where it says that they fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. The King James Version says it exactly the same way, except it adds one tiny little word. It doesn't change anything. Instead of saying that they fell bound into the fiery furnace, it says that they fell down bound. They fell down bound into the fiery furnace. So the only word that's different is down, which doesn't change anything, because if you fall, well, you're going to fall down. You never really fall up or to the side. You fall down. So it doesn't change anything. But that one little word, they fell down bound. That one little word, years ago, I don't remember how long ago this was, but this was years and years and years ago. I had already read this story many times. Many times. I don't know how many times, but I read it many times. But then there came a time when I was reading this story again in the King James with fell down bound instead of just fell bound. Again, it doesn't change anything, but that one word. As I was reading it, there was a rhythm that came into my head. God put a rhythm in my head with those three words. Because fell bound is only two words. Fell down bound is three words, even though it's the same exact thing. But those three words, he put a rhythm in my head to those three words that had never been there before for me. Never, ever, ever. And now I can't read the passage without that rhythm. But when he brought that rhythm into my head, he brought other things with it. And the rhythm was this. It was these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Instead of saying fell down bound, it was they fell down bound. You hear that rhythm? Fell down bound. They fell down bound. They fell down bound. They fell down bound. And with that rhythm, they fell down bound. And it came slow like that too. They fell down bound. With that rhythm also came a picture in my mind of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego exactly falling down bound. But it was with that rhythm. And with the rhythm, what I saw was when the red fell, I saw them with their hands bound in their cloaks, their tunics, and their hats, and their robes, whatever they were wearing. And their hands were bound, so were their legs. And when I read fell, I saw them fall on their knees. So they went from their feet to their knees with their hands and legs bound. And then when down came, they went from their knees and they went falling onto their face. And when bound came, they just kind of did a slight little roll. So they fell down bound. They fell to their knees, down on their face, bound in a slight little roll. And to kind of help you understand a little bit, I created a little visual enactment of this. I don't have the robes and the hat and all that stuff, so that part's missing. But you'll get the gist of what it is that I am talking about here from the little visual I'm going to show. So here, I'm going to bring this up real quick. Here we go. They fell down bound. See that? Fell down bound. This is how they fell in my head. They fell down bound. So you see that one more time. They fell down bound. This is what I saw in my head when I heard that rhythm from God. They fell down, bound. Now, like I said, with that rhythm and with that little image came something else too. And that something else is really what I want to talk about. But to set that up, I have to set it up. I have to give you and the setup's going to be long. I'm sorry, I apologize, but there's no way I can make it shorter. But bear with me, because I think you'll enjoy the setup, and I think you'll enjoy what I get to with the setup. So here's the setup. So they're on this field. Nebuchadnezzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, all the governmental people, they're on the field. It's called the Plains of Dura, and a plain is just a big open field. So they're on this big field, and the biggest threat, the biggest danger on this entire field is a big fiery furnace. Just this big thing of fire ready to consume and kill and destroy people. Just this big thing of fire. That's the biggest threat on this whole field. Now, that's one thing I want to set up. There's this big fiery threat. The second thing is, as these men are carrying Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the fire, it says that these men died, and then Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego fell down, bound into the fiery furnace. They fell down, bound. That rhythm. They fell down, bound. And so the question is, why did they fall? Why did they fall? Was it the fiery furnace that made them fall? It wasn't. For those of you who know this story, and like I said in the last video, this is one of the most famous stories in all the Bible. So if you're a Christian, you've heard this story, or you've read it. Somewhere along the line, you've encountered this story. For those of you who haven't encountered the story, sorry, spoiler alert, but when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego go into the fiery furnace, it doesn't harm them. It doesn't hurt them. It doesn't do anything to them at all. Because of what God's going to do. But so the fiery furnace is not, and fear of the fiery furnace is not what made them fall. It wasn't like they were terrified of it, because they'd made this great announcement to Nebuchadnezzar that, hey, our God's going to deliver us from your hands, from the fiery furnace. Even if he doesn't, he's still able to. So they might have been scared, but they weren't scared. They were ready for that. So it wasn't the fiery furnace that made them fall. Was it the men dropping them when those men died that made them fall? No, it wasn't. Because generally speaking, if you get dropped as a human being, if you get dropped or you start to fall, you extend your hands. Just by nature, you just extend your hands to catch yourself, to stop yourself from falling, to make sure you don't fall. You extend your hands to do that. That's just what every human does. If your hands work, if your arms work, that's just what you do. So it wasn't the men dying and dropping them that made them fall. It was the fact that their hands were bound that made them fall. They couldn't extend their hands to catch themselves because their hands were bound. So it wasn't the fiery furnace. It wasn't the men dropping them. It was the fact that their hands and their legs were bound, and so they couldn't catch themselves to stop themselves from falling. So that's what made them fall, is the fact that they were bound. So now the other question has to be, okay, where did these things they're bound with, these bindings, where did they come from? Where did these bindings come from? And you might say, well, that's a dumb question. No, it's not. It's not a dumb question. Let me take you through what I'm thinking. And what I'm about to say next, I can't prove it. I don't have a time machine, so I can't go back in time to see what actually happened. I can't prove it. This is going to be speculation on my part. It's an assumption on my part. But everything about what I'm about to say is going to be speculation by everybody, even if they say something different, because the Bible doesn't say explicitly. So there has to be some speculation and assumption involved in this, and this is what I speculate. And again, I can't prove it. So if you don't agree with it, that's okay. That's fine. You don't have to, but let me tell you what my assumption is. Okay, my assumption is this, that when Nebuchadnezzar woke up that morning in his palace of the day that he was going to have everybody come and worship the statue, when he woke up that morning, whatever his morning routine was, as he's eating breakfast, whatever he does, he's thinking, cool, today is the day that my statue is going to be worshiped. Today is the day I'm going to have everybody come and they're going to worship the statue. And to make sure that they worship the statue, because if they get into their heads they don't want to, I'm going to ensure that they do, because I'm going to threaten them and say, I'm going to burn you in a fiery furnace if you don't bow and if you don't worship. And because they know me, because they know if I tell you I'm going to kill you, they know I'm going to kill you. They know it. I've done it before. They have no doubt about that at all whatsoever. So if I say I'm going to kill them, they know I'm going to kill them. So they're going to bow. No one's not going to bow, because no one's not going to want to risk. No one's going to want to risk being thrown into the fiery furnace. So there's not even a question that everybody's going to bow. They're all going to bow. So in his head, as he's leaving the palace to go to the fields, the plains of Dura, to have everybody bow, in his head, there's no conception at all that anybody's not going to bow. There's just no conception at all. In his mind, everybody's going to bow. Everybody's going to bow. So because in his mind, there's no conception of anybody not bowing, I don't think that he made preparations for the fact that someone would not bow. I don't think that he did. I don't think that he said to his guards, you know what, there's a chance that people might not bow. Why don't you bring something to bind them with so we can throw them to the fiery furnace when that happens? I don't think he had that conversation, because in his mind, I don't think he was thinking that there was any way that anybody was not going to bow. There was no way. So in his mind, there was no preparation to be made, because there was nobody who was not going to bow. Everybody was going to bow. So when he got there, and he gave the order for everybody to bow, and the music played, I think he was caught by surprise and shocked to find out that there were 3 guys who said we're not going to bow. I think that surprised him. I think that caught him off guard. And I think it caught him unprepared to bind them with what would have been the normal bindings, to throw them into the fiery furnace. Because I don't think he was prepared with official normal bindings, I think that meant that he had to have his guards kind of scrounge around a little bit to find things to bind these people with, because I don't think he had anything ready. So whatever they found, and they bound Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego with. But these things were unexpected things. So what was on their wrists and on their legs binding them were unexpected things. I'll say it that way. They were unexpected things, because there was no preparation made. There was no expectation that anybody would not bow. So there was no preparation made for people not bowing. So that meant that what was binding them were things that weren't expected to be used to be bound, to bind someone with. They were unexpected things. So when I say what made them fall, and I say it was what bound them, I'm going to say it a different way. What made them fall was being bound by unexpected things. Unexpected things are what made them fall down, bound. Fall down, bound into the midst of the fiery furnace. They fell down, bound, because of the unexpected things binding their hands and their feet. Now, that's all my setup. That they fell not because of the greatest threat on the field, not because of the fire and the destruction that was facing them. They fell down bound because of unexpected things being tied around their wrists and their legs. Now, having said all that up, let me say this. Let me get to the thing I want to talk about. As I pointed out in a previous video, I've been a Christian for 30 some odd years, a long time. And in all of that time, I have suffered a lot of horrible things. And I'm not just exaggerating when I say that. I've told people things that I've gone through, just a little bit of what I've gone through, and they're like, oh my goodness, I couldn't deal with that. I'd lose my mind. How are you even still insane? How did you go through that? What? How could you? That's insane. I've never been through anything like that. And then usually I'm only telling them a couple of the things I'm going through. There's so much more. And I tell other people those things and they have the same reaction. So I'll put it all together and they'll be like, oh man, there's no way. I've gone through a lot of things. I've suffered some bad things. And I can say that out of all of those excruciating things I've gone through, all of those horrible things I've gone through, there is one thing, and it's not a thing, but it's really a type of thing. There is one type of thing that I can say that easily is the worst above all the other things that I've gone through. It's the worst by far. And it's a type of thing that I've gone through a number of times, and every single time it is the worst thing, and you might be able to relate to it. Basically what happens is some humongous threat comes onto the field, so to speak. And it's one gigantic threat. It's a fiery threat, ready to destroy, consume, and just destroy everything that I have. And it might be a giant financial issue that's coming up. That's like this massive giant bill this that requires just a ton of money. Maybe it's a health issue. Maybe it's a relationship issue where it's like, oh man, I got to deal with this person. Whether this person's in my family, a friend, or at work, it's something that I have to deal with with a person. And maybe it's something that I have a deadline for, and it's like, oh my goodness, I don't have a lot of time. But it's something huge. It's something big, and it's something scary. But I actually have the resource to deal with that thing. If it's a big, scary issue financially, I actually have the money in my bank account to deal with it. I can deal with it. If it's a relationship thing, I actually have the favor with the person that I need to deal with, but I got to treat them carefully. But I have the favor, and I have the thing I need to be able to talk to them. If it's a time thing, well, I got plenty of time. So whatever the scary thing is, it's scary, it's big, it's huge, but I have the resource to deal with it. So I'm scared, but I'm not scared, if that makes sense. I'm concerned, but I'm not really concerned because I have the resource to deal with it. But the problem is, and this is where the part about being the worst thing that I ever experienced comes in. As I'm moving to deal with that thing, that scary, big thing that's facing me, threatening to consume and destroy me, but I have the resources to meet it. As that thing is threatening me, and as I'm moving toward it to deal with it, I'm bringing my money from my bank account to deal with it. I'm bringing the favor that God has given me to deal with this person. As I'm moving toward it to deal with it, all of a sudden, all of these little things that have nothing to do with the big things start showing up out of nowhere, start coming out of nowhere. Little things, little bitty things, but they start taking away, just chipping away at the resources that I needed for the big thing. If it was a financial thing that was coming at me that I needed to deal with, and I have the money to deal with it, but then all of a sudden these little things start coming to take the money away. Maybe somebody gets sick in the family and now I have to go buy medicine that I didn't have to buy before, but that takes money away. Maybe the bank hits me with a fee that I've never had before, but it takes money away. Maybe the car breaks down and now I've got to get the car fixed to get to work, or my wife needs a car and now I've got to pay for that, and it takes that money away. So all these little things All these little things that I have the money to deal with, and I take care of them. But as I take care of them, the resource that I need to take care of the big scary thing is going away. It's going away. And maybe it's not the finances, maybe it's the time. Maybe I had a week to deal with this thing, but because all these other little things are coming and they're eating up the time that I would have to focus toward this big thing, but I can't now focus these things. Instead of having a week, I got 2 days or a day or 3 days, and it's such a small amount of time. It's like, now I'm terrified. It's such a small amount of money. Now I'm scared to death because I had the resources before, but now because of these little things coming and binding up my hands and my feet to where this big thing that I had the ability to deal with before and now I don't, I begin to fall down, bound into the midst of the fiery furnace. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they couldn't stand. It says they fell down. They couldn't stand in the fire, not because they were scared, but because they were bound. And when the fire comes that you could have dealt with, but now all these little things have bound up your feet and your hands, you find you can't stand, and you begin to fall down, bound. And that is the worst feeling in the world, to know I had the power to deal with this. I had the power, but these little things have bound me, and I can't stand. I can't stand to fight. My resources are too small now. In fact, they might all be gone because the little things that came and bound my hands and my feet, the little unexpected things, the things that shouldn't be here. I dealt with one of the unexpected things, but when I dealt with one of them, 2 more came in its place. When I dealt with the 2, 5 more came. When I dealt with the 5, 1 more came. But they keep coming, and I keep losing my resources. And I tell you, when that happens to you, it feels like somebody has put your brain on fire. It feels like somebody has put a big giant thing through your heart, and you feel like, man, I'm dying. I am dying. I wasn't dying when it was only the big thing in the field and I had the resources, but now I'm dying. It is the worst feeling in the world to fall down, bound, when you had the resources and you don't now because of unexpected things. That is the worst feeling you'll ever have. And some of you, maybe all of you, have experienced that, and you know what that feels like. It's horrible. It is horrible. It is horrible to have the big thing facing you, and you've got the resources to deal with the big thing, but then the little things come and they bind you. This passage, I can't read it without that rhythm. Every time I read it, even if I read it in the NIV, which has only the 2 words, and it doesn't have the word down, so it just fell bound. But still that rhythm comes back into my brain. Fell down, bound. I can't even read this passage without that rhythm anymore. Fell down, bound. Because it speaks of all the little things that bound me in all those scenarios and all those situations I've had in my life that made me not able to stand against the big thing that I should have been able to stand against because I had the resources. And what I've had to learn through those times when the little unexpected things come to bind me, what I've had to learn, and I have learned it, is exactly the thing that's about to happen to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the passages that come after this. What I had to learn was those resources were never my resources. The money that I had in the bank account, it wasn't my resource. The time that I had to deal with this, it wasn't my resource. The favor that I had, it wasn't my resources. All of those things that were my resources really weren't my resource. They weren't my resource. My resource always was God. He was always my resource. And whereas the money could run out, whereas the time could run out, whereas the favor could diminish because of all these unexpected things, God never runs out. There's never an end to him. He's infinite. And because he's infinite, he always is the resource to take care of the fiery thing. Because Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're going to be able to stand in this fire. We're going to see in the next couple of verses that where they fell down bound, pretty soon they're actually standing and they're walking around because the resource came into the fire with them. God is the resource that got them up, that got them walking around. And I had to learn that. And eventually I did. And so it became to the point where I realized, okay, if I'm running out of money and I don't have the money to deal with this, God owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. He said, the silver and the gold are mine, the earth and the fullness thereof. I never run out of money. And what I learned is when I was running out of those situations where I was losing money, running out of money, I didn't have the money, somehow he always met the need. He always met the need. Whatever I was lacking, he filled it. Even if I had nothing, he filled it. Even with time too. When I was running out of time and I didn't have enough time to deal with this anymore, or if I just flat ran out of time, he was the one who created time. He made time. He invented it. He created it. He controls it. And I was able to see through those situations that, oh, I don't have any time. He would begin to stretch time. And he would stretch it to where if I needed 20 things done, but there was only time enough for 2 things, he found a way to fit the 20 into the time for the 2. I don't know how he did it, but he did. It's like he stretched time. And maybe he didn't stretch time. Maybe he extended the time to where I needed it by this point, but he gave me an extension to go to this point. He supplied the time. He supplied the favor. He supplied whatever it was I was missing at the time that I needed it. Even though these little things that come and bound me and I fell down, bound, whatever I was missing, he filled it to the point where I started to realize, oh, these little things come and they're taking away the resources, but they're not taking away the resource, who is God. He's always here. Scripture says he's an ever-present help in times of trouble. And I began to realize, I don't have to fall down bound into this fire. I don't have to fall down bound. I can just relax and chill because the resource is here and he will take care of whatever I need. There is a cool verse, a very cool verse in Psalms 145:14. It says, the Lord upholds all who fall and lifts up all who are bowed down. So as you're falling down bound, God is the one who lifts up all who falls. If you're his servant, if you love him, and if you serve him, he lifts you up. And as I said, we're going to see that in the next passage, because again, they're going to be walking around because God comes into the fire and lifts them up. So he's our resource. He's our resource. When you got the fiery furnace that's threatening to destroy you, it's coming at you, and you've got the resources. Or maybe you don't have the resources. It doesn't really matter. It's coming to destroy you, but you've got what you need. But the little things are coming and trying to bind your hands to keep you from being able to do what you need to do. The resource is still there. God. He is the resource. We talked about in the last video that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego understood that no matter what they were facing, God was able to help them, and that they had confidence, and because they had their confidence muscle build up. In the last video, we talked about building your confidence muscle. Well, when you begin to see God work in the middle of the fiery furnaces with all the things that try to come to bind you up, and you begin to see that begins to build that confidence muscle. It's like, oh, he did it before, he's going to do it again. He filled the need before, those last 20 times, he's going to feel it this time. He's always feeling it because he's the resource and he never runs out. And that's where our confidence starts to build in him, to where the next time this happens, it's a little less scary than the last time. And then when the next time happens, it's a little less scary than that time. And when each time it happens, it becomes a little less scarier because you begin to see God working more each time. And you begin to have that confidence in the next time he met the need last time, he's going to take care of it this time. I can just rest. That is what came to me. All of that is what came to me all those years ago when God first put this rhythm into my head. They fell down bound, meaning they fell down bound because of the unexpected things. But when you know that God is your resource, he rescues you from falling down bound, because you never run out of resources with him. Okay? So hopefully, I know this is a much longer video than I normally make, but hopefully that was beneficial. Hopefully you understand that those unexpected things that come to make you fall down bound, that try to tie your hands in the midst of the fiery furnace, that want to try to make you not stand against it, you can stand, because our confidence is not in the resources in our hand, not in the resources in our bank account, not in our resources that the time on my clock I have enough time, but our confidence is in the ultimate resource, who is God himself. Okay? So just keep that in your mind. Keep that. If you have to play this over and over again to get that into your head, then do it. But you got to understand, you got to know that God is your resource. And I hope that encourages you. I hope that blesses you. And I hope it gives you the strength that you need to stand in the middle of those fiery furnaces. And even when the fiery furnace isn't there, that when those unexpected things come up, he's the resource. All right? All right, take care. Enjoy yourself, and I hope that was a blessing for you. Bye-bye.